My father's voice cracked like a whip across the dinner table. You and your kid are just freeloaders. I didn't flinch. I set my fork down slowly, met his eyes and stayed silent. The room went still. My mother smiled, that small, cruel smile she'd perfected over decades, and nodded as if he'd just stated something obvious. The three of us sat there in my own house, the one I'd bought with money I'd earned, eating food I'd paid for, and they were calling me a leech. I was 36 years old. I'd built a life they could never touch. But in that moment something shifted. Not panic. Not hurt. Something colder. Took me back to when I was 18. The letter sat in my hand, crisp and heavy with possibility. University of Louisville acceptance. Computer science program. Everything I'd worked toward. That summer evening the air hung thick and humid. My father was in his recliner, arms crossed. My mother stood by the window, her posture already apologetic, like she was bracing for something. They didn't waste time. We need your inheritance, my father said. Not asked. Stated. My grandfather had passed a year before, leaving me $100,000. My safety net. My future. I'd been planning my escape route since I could remember. Not from my family, but toward something bigger. Computer science. Career. Freedom. What do you mean need it? I asked. My mother turned from the window. Your brother has an opportunity. A construction business. Your father and Philip need capital to get started. It's just temporary, Colleen. They'll pay you back once. No. I didn't let her finish. I'm using it for college. That's what it's for. My father's face hardened. This is family, Colleen. Your brother's chance depends on this. Philip. My older brother who charmed his way through everything. The golden child. The one they'd always believed in while I was the quiet one, the steady one, the one they could count on to be reasonable. What about my chance? I asked. My father didn't answer. He just waited the way he always did when he expected me to give in. I looked at my mother. She wouldn't meet my eyes. That night I packed a duffel bag. $200 in cash from my savings, my laptop, and the clothes I could fit. I left the acceptance letter on the kitchen counter and walked out the front door. No one stopped me. No one called. College was work. 3 jobs, waitressing, stocking shelves, tutoring kids in math. Some nights I'd fall asleep at my desk with my textbooks still open. There were weeks I lived on instant noodles, counting coins for the bus. But I kept my head down and moved forward. My parents called maybe twice a year. Brief conversations that always ended the same way. How's school? My mother would ask, her voice distant. Before I could answer, she'd pivot. Your brother's working so hard on his new project. The construction business had collapsed within a year. They never mentioned paying me back. Not once. I graduated top of my class with a degree in computer science and landed an entry-level position at a tech startup in Louisville. Then I met my ex-husband, got married, had Dylan. For a while I thought I'd found stability. But 3 years in I found texts on his phone. Another woman. I didn't beg him to stay. I packed his bags, left them by the door and said, "Get out." He did, but he stayed in Dylan's life, sending money every month. That was enough for me. By 36, I was a product manager at a software firm, managing a team of 12 people. I made good money, more than good. I'd bought a 3-bedroom house in a quiet suburb with my own mortgage payments. My son Dylan was 12, brilliant and kind, the center of my world. I built everything from scratch. Every achievement was mine. No one handed me anything. My parents and I existed in a careful distance. A birthday text. A Christmas call. When they started asking for money, I said no. The requests got sharper. My mother's texts would mention my father's failing business, or some new venture Philip was starting. I stopped responding. Then on a quiet Tuesday evening, my mother's call came through. I was helping Dylan with his homework when her name lit up my phone. I almost didn't answer. We hadn't spoken in months, not since her last request for $10,000. But something made me pick up. Her voice was different, shaky, urgent. Colleen, it's your father. He's sick, really sick. His heart. Doctors say he needs surgery, but we're in trouble. The bank's threatening to foreclose. $300,000 in debt from his latest business venture. I pressed the phone to my ear, my heart racing. The house. The place I'd grown up. The place where they'd taken everything from me. What do you want me to do? I asked, keeping my voice steady. Come back, she said. Talk to the bank. Help us. You're doing so well, Colleen, and we're family. Family. The word landed different now. Sharper. I told her I'd think about it and hung up. That night I couldn't sleep. I sat on my couch with a glass of wine I didn't drink, replaying her words. My father's sick. The house at risk. $300,000. Part of me wanted to ignore it, let them deal with their own mess. They'd never cared about my struggles. Why should I care about theirs? But another part of me, the part that still remembered my father teaching me to ride a bike, my mother's kitchen smelling like chocolate chip cookies, gnawed at me. What if I didn't go back? Would I regret it? I called my best friend Denise the next morning. She'd been my rock for 5 years, my financial advisor, my voice of reason. Don't let them guilt trip you, she said immediately. They've been bleeding you dry for years. You don't owe them anything. She was right, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I needed to face them. Not for their sake, but for mine. If I didn't, I'd spend the rest of my life wondering what if. I'm going back, I told her. Not to save them. To close a chapter one left open too long. I sat Dylan down that evening. I need to go to Louisville for a few days, I said. To see your grandfather. Is he okay? Dylan asked, his voice small. I don't know yet, I said, brushing his hair back. But I'll be back soon. We'll have pizza night when I get home. He nodded, trusting me completely. Packing for the trip felt surreal. I booked a flight, arranged for Dylan to stay with a trusted neighbor, and called my boss. The whole time my stomach churned. I wasn't just going back to a house. I was walking into something I couldn't yet see. As the plane descended into Louisville, I felt it, that mix of dread and resolve. I rented a car and drove to the house. It looked smaller than I remembered. Paint peeling. Lawn overgrown. Like it had been slowly dying since I left. My mother greeted me at the door, her face pale but composed. Thank you for coming, she said softly. I nodded, stepping inside, already bracing for what was coming. The next evening, she laid out the situation over coffee. The bank was moving fast. They needed me to step in. You've got the means, she said, her tone shifting from pleading to expectant. I listened, saying nothing. My mind was already racing ahead, toward the confrontation I knew was inevitable. We'd like you to stay for dinner, my mother said. A family meal. To talk things through. I agreed, not knowing what she was really planning. I didn't know that Philip would be there. I didn't know my father would explode. I didn't know my mother would smile when he called me a freeloader. And I didn't know that in that moment, sitting at that table in a house I'd once begged them to let me leave, I would finally understand something I'd spent 18 years trying to forget. They would never see me. Not really. And that was when everything began to crumble. That evening I agreed to stay for dinner. The table was set when I came downstairs. My mother had made her best effort. Roasted chicken, fresh vegetables, the kind of meal she used to make when I was little and still believed in her. Philip was already there, leaning back in a chair with that familiar smirk, like he owned the room just by existing. My father sat at the head of the table, his health issues visible in the slight tremor of his hands, but his eyes still held that stubborn glint. He hadn't mellowed with age. If anything, sickness had made him sharper, meaner. The first few minutes were deceptive calm. My mother chatted about neighbors I didn't remember. Philip bragged about some vague real estate venture. I picked at my food and waited. My father broke the silence. "We need to talk about the house," he said, leaning forward. "The bank's not budging. 300,000, and they're ready to take it." "I know," I said carefully. "Your messages made that clear." My mother jumped in, her tone shifting. "You're making good money, Colleen. 350,000 a year, isn't it? You could cover at least 200,000. It's the least you can do for family. 200,000. Not a loan. Not a discussion. A demand." I set my fork down. "I have my own responsibilities. My son. My house. My future." My father's face hardened. "You've always been selfish," he snapped. "We raised you, gave you everything, and now you won't help when we need you most." Gave me everything. The inheritance they'd stolen. The years they'd left me alone. The way they'd celebrated my brother's failures while ignoring my survival. "You gave me nothing," I said quietly, "except a reason to leave." Philip chimed in, his voice dripping with condescension. "Come on, Colleen. Don't play the victim. You're sitting pretty while we're drowning." I looked at him, really looked at him, and something crystallized. He'd coasted his entire life on their belief in him, on their willingness to beg on his behalf. He'd never had to fight for anything. He'd never had to choose between eating and paying for college. He'd never stood alone. "You know what's funny?" I said, my voice steady. "I don't remember you being there when I was working 3 jobs to pay for school. I don't remember any of you asking if I had enough to eat." My mother leaned forward, her smile cold and calculated. "You and your son are just freeloaders," she said. "Living off our sacrifices. Acting like you're better than us." The word hit like a blade. But it was the mention of Dylan that broke something in me. I stood up, my chair scraping against the floor. "Don't you dare bring my son into this," I said, my voice low but sharp as a knife. "He's never asked you for anything. He's never done anything to you. You don't get to call him a freeloader." My father scoffed, his face red. "Show some respect, Colleen. We're your parents." "Parents don't do what you did," I said. "Parents don't take everything from their child and then act confused when that child becomes someone they don't recognize." My mother tried to speak, her voice rising. "Colleen, you owe us. We're family." I cut her off. My patience shattered like glass. "Family doesn't demand what I've earned," I said, each word deliberate. "Family doesn't insult my son. You want to call us freeloaders? Fine. I'm done being your safety net. I'm done apologizing for surviving. I'm done." The room went silent. Their faces were a mix of shock and contempt. My father slammed his hand on the table. "You think you're better than us? You're nothing without this family." I didn't flinch. I'd spent years building my life, and their words couldn't touch me anymore. I walked out of the dining room, my hand steady, my mind already racing with something I'd never considered before. I called Denise that night from my hotel room. "You're really done with them?" she asked, her voice a mix of worry and something else, maybe pride. "I have to be," I said. "For Dylan. For me." She didn't argue. "Then we need to talk strategy," she said. "Give me a few hours." 2 days after that dinner, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Friends, coworkers, even Dylan's soccer coach sent messages. "Have you seen this?" I opened TikTok and there she was. My mother's face tear-streaked, her voice trembling with rehearsed emotion. "My daughter abandoned us," she said, clutching a tissue. "She's got all this money, but won't help her own family save our home. She's turned her back on us, on her own blood." The caption read, "Ungrateful daughter leaves parents to lose everything." It had thousands of views, hundreds of comments calling me heartless, selfish, a disgrace. Strangers who didn't know me, Didn't know the inheritance she'd taken. Didn't know the nights I'd gone hungry while she complained about not having enough. I sat on my hotel bed, my hands shaking with rage. She'd taken our private war public. She'd made me the villain in her story. I wanted to fire back, post my own video, tell the world the truth. But I knew better. Reacting in anger would only fuel her narrative. I called Denise again. "I saw the video," she said before I could speak. "It's disgusting. I want to take control," I said, my voice steady despite the rage. "I'm not going to let them bully me into submission." Denise didn't hesitate. "Then let's hit them where it hurts. The house. They're desperate to keep it. You've got the means. Buy it out from under them." The idea sparked something in me. It wasn't just about revenge. It was about reclaiming my power, my dignity. It was about showing them that I wasn't the person they'd made me believe I was. "Do it," I said. The next day, I met with a real estate attorney named Laura. She was sharp, direct, and exactly what I needed. "The bank is ready to foreclose," she confirmed. "You could buy the property directly from them, wiping out your parents' claim. Own it outright." "How long?" I asked. "A week. Maybe less." I nodded. "Make it happen." Denise worked her magic, pulling together my savings and investments. Within 5 days, the papers were signed. I was the legal owner of the house I'd grown up in. It felt surreal, like closing a wound I'd carried for 18 years. But I wasn't done. I had Laura draft a contract. My parents could stay in the house, but only if they agreed to repay the $300,000 over 5 years with interest. Miss a payment and they'd be out. It was a lifeline, but one with my conditions attached. Then I had Laura send an official notice. I owned the house. They were tenants. The notice also included a cease and desist letter demanding Eleanor take down the TikTok video. "Defamation has consequences," Laura wrote. Her words were crisp and unyielding. When the notice arrived, my mother called, her voice shrill with fury. "You think you can control us, Colleen?" she spat. "You're no better than us, throwing your money around like you're some big shot." I let her rant. My silence was louder than her words. "You got the notice," I said finally. "Follow it or face the consequences." I hung up. Philip texted later, "You're ruthless." I didn't respond. He wasn't wrong. But I wasn't sorry either. My parents refused to sign the contract. My mother's response came through Laura. They didn't owe me anything. They were demanding to stay in the house without agreeing to my terms. I told Laura to move forward with eviction proceedings. "No more chances," I said. They made their choice. The process took 30 days. Eleanor sent me a flurry of texts, each one sharper than the last. "You're tearing this family apart," she wrote. Kenneth's messages were colder, more direct. "You'll regret this, Colleen." I saved every message, handed them all to Laura as evidence of their hostility. By the end of the month, they were gone. Laura confirmed they'd moved out, leaving the house in chaos, boxes half-packed, furniture shoved against walls like they'd left in a huff. I flew back to Louisville to inspect the property. Walking through the rooms felt strange, like stepping into a memory I didn't want to relive. The kitchen was cluttered. My old bedroom had been turned into storage for Philip's failed ventures. I didn't linger. I hired a cleaning crew and put the house up for rent. The income would cover the loan I'd taken to buy it, with anything left going to Dylan's college fund. I learned later that my parents had rented a small apartment on the edge of town. Eleanor was working part-time at a grocery store. George had found bookkeeping work with a local business. For the first time in their lives, they had to stand on their own. Philip had moved in with them, still chasing his next big idea. I didn't care to know the details. Their lives were no longer my burden. I flew back home and picked up Dylan from my neighbor's house. He ran to me, his smile brighter than the sun. "Did you fix everything?" he asked. I hugged him tight, my throat tight. I'm working on it, kid. That weekend, we planted flowers in our backyard, something we'd been talking about for months. As we dug in the dirt, Dylan asked about his grandparents. Are they mad at us? He said, his voice small. I paused, choosing my words carefully. They're mad at themselves, I said. But we're okay. You and me. We've got each other. He nodded, satisfied, and went back to planting. That moment, his trust in me, was worth more than any apology I'd never get. Cutting my parents off was harder than I expected, not because I wanted their approval. I'd given up on that years ago, but because letting go meant closing a door I'd always hoped might open to something better. I blocked their numbers, deleted their voicemails, unfollowed Eleanor's TikTok account. But I kept moving forward. Denise checked in with her usual blunt advice. You're free now, she said one evening over coffee. They can't touch you anymore. She was right. I threw myself into work, mentoring younger colleagues, taking on new projects. I wanted Dylan to see a mother who wasn't just surviving but thriving. My team noticed the change. My focus was sharper. My confidence unshaken. Looking back, the lesson wasn't about winning or losing. It wasn't about the house, the money, or the pain they'd caused. It was about respect. Family isn't just blood. It's the people who see you, who lift you up, who fight for you as much as you fight for them. My parents chose themselves every time. I chose Dylan, Denise, the life I'd built from nothing. That's what family means to me now. Dylan's laughter fills our house with a warmth I never knew growing up. I don't know if my parents ever learned their lesson, and I don't need to know. I've got my son. I've got my work. I've got my peace. And that's enough.